uluhiyah or rububiyyah. There are problems with what? Uluhiyah. Right? And belief in the uluhiyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala necessitates what? Our belief in what? Asma' wa sifat. It has to. Why? How should I or why should I worship a God that doesn't what? Hear me. Or a God that's not perfect. Or a God that's not forgiving. Or a God that's not merciful. Or a God that's not capable. Or a God that's not generous. Or a God that's not this, that, or the third, right? I worship Allah because He has perfect names and what? Attributes. Right? So all of this, it's intertwined with one another. And this surah, it highlights our belief as Muslims. Our belief in the right of Allah to be worshipped alone. Our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability to create us, maintain us, and sustain for us. As well as recognizing the beautiful names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any other names of this Quran? Surah, sorry? Any other names? Okay, it's always the same three. Okay, mashallah. Brothers? Okay, go ahead, sister in the back. Asas is what? The foundation. Because as I said, everything stands on this. Everything stands on this. What's the evidence? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Meaning, everything is according to your intention for Allah. And your reward will be according to that intention. طيب. One more. There's one more. Samad. Those two more. Yes. Samad. Ahsanti. You wrote it down, mashallah. See, that's good. That's why we write things down, guys. Right? Ma'rifah. Ma'rifah is knowledge. To know something. And Samad is what? Allah is self, what? Sufficient. Right? The surah of As-Samad. That is one of the beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we said, with all these different names, does that contradict the authenticity of the Quran? Why? The name is not part of the surah. The name is not Quran. The names given to these specific chapters are not considered revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were given by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were given by the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and they were given by some of the tabi'een as well. In order to do what? Two things. Number one, to distinguish the the chapters, as well as to highlight the main theme of the chapter. Right? طيب. Place and time. تفضل. That's okay. That's from the ulum of the Quran, the sciences of the Quran. But what we do know is that the order is from Allah Azza wa Jal. Because the Prophet ﷺ used to recite with Jibreel in that order. And the year that he passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Ramadan, he recited it how many times? Twice. With Jibreel alayhi salam. In that order. In that order. طيب. Now we have place and time of revelation. So, place and time of revelation. Quran revealed 23 years, 13 years Mecca we said, 10 years Medina. And it was revealed under different times, different circumstances, and different places. Now, does anybody know the actual classification of Quran and its different verses? How they refer to in the sciences of Quran? They're either this or this. This chapter is this or this chapter is this. These verses are this or these verses are that. Go ahead in the back, Abdul. Makki and Madani. Right? So, what qualifies a verse being Makki or a chapter being Makki, and what qualifies a verse being Madani? I want someone in the back. Is that Kawthar? Yalla, inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. Huh? Okay, so could I say that there was a verse revealed in Mecca and I can categorize it as a Madani verse? Or would that be wrong? I'm going to give it to you. You look very excited to answer the question. Yes.
It's sorry, but it's like before and after his migration to Medina.
Ahsanti. Very good. So it's not necessarily where it was revealed, but it was what? When? When it was revealed. Any verse of the Quran that was revealed after the Hijrah or before the Hijrah will start is considered what? Makki. Any verse, any Quran that was revealed before the Prophet ﷺ made Hijrah, even if it was outside of what? Mecca, like in Ta'if, for example, that would be considered what? Makki, no matter what. Any verse that was revealed after Hijrah, after the Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ from Mecca to Medina, would be qualified as what? Madani. Even if it was revealed in a battle, or if it was revealed in the final pilgrimage of the Prophet ﷺ on his way back to Mecca, it's still categorized as what? Madani. Now, why is this distinction important? Why is it so important to distinguish where and when the Quran was revealed? Why is it so important? Why can't we just say it's all from Allah? Yani, let's just accept it. Go ahead, Akhi. Okay, let's talk about that. Ahsan. Rulings, because we have the concept of abrogation, isn't it? So rulings. A scholar in Islam would not be able to effectively give a ruling from the Quran without understanding at least the general time and place of revelation. I'll give you an example. So we have the issue of alcohol. The issue of what? Alcohol. So initially, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about alcohol, He said that, or He mentioned, and He clarified in Surah Al-Baqarah, that its harms are superior than its what? Benefits. That's all He spoke about. That was the first time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about alcohol in the Quran in terms of revelation. Later on in Surah Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then calls out to the believers, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, do not what? Approach salah wa antum sukara. Do not approach salah in a state of intoxication. Okay? So now we're like, okay, is drinking still halal in this state? It is. But it's just I'll probably have to wait till after what? Isha in order to drink. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Ma'idah, what does He say? He says, Fajtanibu. Fajtanibu means what? Completely what? Rid yourself of it. Now, if we didn't understand the timing of this revelation, you'd have a really smart guy, you know, the cool guy, you know, like the really smart guy, like the mashallah type of guy, who comes in, he says, you know, alcohol is actually halal. Because first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, stay away from it. And then He went on to say, listen, if you want to do it, just do it what? After salah. And then He's like, okay, got too hard on them. So He's like, listen, if you want to do it, but know that there's more harm than what? Benefit. So He takes the rulings and He what? He flips it. So the scholars, they say, no, you need to understand that these verses are revealed for specific reasons. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, if the verse in Surah Ma'idah, Fajtanibu, initially came down, she would say, no one would quit drinking alcohol. Right? So this verse in Surah Ma'idah, it didn't come in till when? Medina. So we're talking about 13 years of Islam, alcohol was what? Permissible. It was permissible. But then you get into Medina, she says, when the order came down to refrain, she said the streets of Medina were flowing with what? Wine. Why? Does anybody know? Go ahead. Everybody's dumping out what they had. But why are they dumping it out in Medina and they wouldn't dump it out in Mecca? And this leads us to the second reason, the importance of understanding when these verses are revealed. Go ahead.
Because they've already built their foundation.
Because they built their foundation. You want me to sacrifice for God? You want me to, quit what I'm essentially addicted to? You want me to, just submit? There's a prerequisite. And that prerequisite is Surah Ikhlas. You cannot, you say, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي. For who? لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Do you think you're able to give all that to لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ if you don't know لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ? You can't. You listen to your mother and your father because you what? You love them. You know them. They're always there for you. They provide for you. They're willing to sacrifice for you. When you understand who Allah is, then you'll appreciate Him more. And that's why when you look at the Mekki and the Medini verses, are they different? Are they different? How are they different? How are they different? Go ahead.
The Mekki verses talk more about Tawheed, who Allah is.
Tawheed, who Allah is. What else does Mekki talk about? Day of Judgment, repercussions, right? What else? Jannah and Jahannam, right? Getting your heart attached. And then Madani deals with what? Go ahead. More of like a way of life. What else? Go ahead. Events in the Seerah. Sure, yeah, because obviously, yeah. Laws and rulings, that's the big one. Don't do this, do this. Islam is based on do and don't. Essentially, when everything is brought down to the bare minimum, Islam is based on do's and don'ts, on orders and prohibitions. But you will not be able to fulfill those orders or prohibitions unless your heart is first attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So let's get into it, inshallah. Another reason, you guys want to get into this, like, let's just study the surah. It's like, yeah, I know, let's study the surah, but there's prerequisites. Don't worry, when we talk about Surah Falaq and Surah Nas, we won't have to get into this, but this is prerequisite, right? What's another reason, the importance of distinguishing the verses? Go ahead.
It will help us contemplate more in terms of the context. Like looking at Surah Al-Imran, where it talks about Ghazwat Uhud, be able to contemplate and understand it better.
Absolutely, and they were a young community. Weren't they a young community at the time of Uhud? And a community that made mistakes. They made mistakes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reprimands them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them, and they learn from that. But context is important. Another reason is for da'wah purposes. For da'wah, it teaches you how to give da'wah. So like, somebody accepts Islam. Sister was in my office last week. She accepted Islam. And I was like, okay, sister, put on your hijab. Don't leave here without putting on your hijab, sister. Like, that is ignorant. Right? And change your name while you're at it. What is this? And by the way, Ramadan is like next month, and like, sister's like, I'm overwhelmed, khalas, I don't need this faith. Right? You have to understand, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented this deen is the way we should present this deen. Get the people's heart attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Get these people to understand that there are repercussions for their actions. Get these people to understand that Allah loves them more than their own mother. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for them. That everything that Allah has ordained, it's because there's a maslahah, there's a benefit in there for you, both in this life and in the next. And once a person's heart is attached to Allah, then naturally these things are going to what? Fall into place. You know what I say when a person accepts Islam? This is the only thing I say to them. Listen, the only thing I need you to focus on for the next year. That's what I say to them. I don't even joke around. I say, all I want you to focus on for the next year is what? Take a guess. Think. Huh? Go ahead. Oh, good, but how? Salah. It's the only thing. I don't care about anything. I don't care about anything. Because Allah has given me the equation. Inna salata tanha an al-fahsha'i wal-munkar. Instead of you looking at that individual and say, okay, well, you got to stop smoking weed, you got to stop going to the club, you got to stop drinking, you got to, stop, you got to break up from all your, your relationships. And listen, this thing I say, it's not my place to say right now. My place to say is, listen, you want a relationship, you start with a relationship with God. And naturally, when a person's heart gets attached to Allah, what happens? Why do you think so many people change during the month of Ramadan? Why do you think so many people, it's like that Ramadan? Everybody's like a Ramadan to remember. Like, everyone has that one Ramadan where things what? Changed. Why? Your hand was up.
Their hearts get attached to Allah.
Because their hearts are attached.
So it's easier to follow.
And what are you doing like most of the time in Ramadan other than fasting?
Reading Quran and praying.
And standing in Salah, Taraweeh. Prayer is like, right? Even if you don't go to Taraweeh. You just like, even at school, it's like, we're going to pray. It's like, I'm going to go pray. Like, you're going to see this place fill up during Ramadan. People are like, well, what the heck is this guy doing here? No, let that guy come in. And don't, iyyakum. Iyyakum. Do not be that person who thinks they're superior because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got. They're not your guest when they come here, by the way. They're not the MSA's guest or the Quran Project's guest. You are our guest. Welcome to our venue. No, this is the place of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to invite them to your house, that's different. But when they come to the masjid or they come to the prayer area, Allah guided them here. It's your duty not to stand there and be like, oh my God, she came. That's not your place. Or, oh, he's here now, and now he wants to be the sheikh. He wants to be religious now. Well, who are you? Who am I? When they come in, you grab them. I got a spot for you. Bring them all the way to the front. You make them feel comfortable. They're the guest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So connecting their hearts with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's still so much that we could talk about. But I don't know if I want to do this. We'll leave it. Where do you think the surah was revealed? Huh? Mecca? Sisters? Yeah. So the scholars, they differ between whether it was revealed in Mecca and revealed in Medina. But the stronger opinion is that it was revealed in Mecca. And that is simply due to its theme, which is what? Tawheed. Who is Allah? Who is Allah? If you ever wondered who is God, this is the surah that will tell you who God is. Who's God? No, who really is God? This is the surah that will tell you who is God. How much time do we have? Again, I don't want to take too much of your guys' time today.
We have until Maghrib. Maghrib is at like 5:15.
So that's 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
We have until Maghrib here.
Time goes by too quick. Taib, let's just then get into the surah. Sorry, guys. One thing that I found very beautiful when studying the surah. Surahs in the Quran are often coupled, isn't it? They're often coupled. Who can give me some couples of the surahs of the Quran? Go ahead, and then you go ahead. Falaq al-Nas, good, yeah. She took it. Well, give me another one. Very good. When is that done? Jum'ah prayer. There's another time that's done. That's especially done during Eid. You said what? A'la and Ghashiyah. Yeah. Salatul Eid, Prophet ﷺ often would recite, and you'll see every Imam will do it in the city. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى هل أتاك حديث الغاشية. They're coupled. Another one. In the back. Okay, wait, you haven't spoken yet. Go ahead. Shamsi wal layl. Right? It makes sense, right? Go ahead. Good. I'd like to see you guys couple that, inshallah. Go ahead. When is that done? Fajr on Friday. A kafirun wa? Is it? No, kafirun and ikhlas. This is like the main one. Kafirun and suratul ikhlas. Why? I'm going to give him a chance to think. This is beautiful. So, like, this is what you recite for Fajr, for example, right? The Sunnah of Fajr. This is what you recite when you're behind Maqam Ibrahim, when you're doing Umrah or Hajj. This is what you recite, some of the scholars say, when you're praying Salatul Isti. Should I marry him? Should I marry her? Ya Allah. Huh? You guys are going to need this one very soon. Yeah, the brother's like, no, not me. I was like, yeah, you, brother, you're the first one to get married. Watch. Right? It's usually the guy's like, not me, right? The guy who always wants it so bad, he's the last one to get married. The guy's like, oh, I'll never get married. Next year you say, MashaAllah, Mabruk, ya akhi. Huh? Why? Why? Yes. Beautiful. Did you guys hear that? He says, Surah Al-Kafirun, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا negates everything that they worship. Or negates anything that I would worship. Whereas Surah Ikhlas affirms absolutely everything that I would what? Worship. So in Islam, we have this concept of al-wala wal-bara. Right? Loyalty and disassociation. And this is how we as Muslims, we establish our faith. That we're loyal to what Allah is loyal to, and we love what Allah loves, and we disassociate ourselves from what Allah disassociates Himself from, and from what He hates. That is what we are establishing our faith upon. Al-wala wal-bara. Loyalty and disassociation. Right? And this surah, Surah Al-Ikhlas, is often coupled with this chapter. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. This is what I negate, and this is what I affirm. Right? So when you're reciting it, understand what you're reciting and why you're reciting it. Number one, Allah, I am reciting this to distance myself or disassociate myself with any partner to be associated with you. And then I affirm that you and you alone are the only one deserving of worship. Let's get into the surah, inshallah ta'ala. Qul, I walked in and the brother said there's two types of guidance. What are they? Irshad and tawfiq. What is irshad? Huh? It's like direction. Okay, what is tawfiq? The ability from who? From Allah to carry through. You know, the biggest, I teach kids most of the time. That's where I find the most reward, teaching young kids. When I'm teaching them the concept of irshad and tawfiq, you want to know what tawfiq is? This is tawfiq. Put a toonie in. It's toonie now. It used to be 25 cents back in my day. Now you guys are getting ripped off. You put a toonie in. You put a toonie in. You know this, and then what? Yeah? That's tawfiq. That's God seeing all that crowd that you're in, all that mess that you're in. It's like, hey, I got you, don't worry. I'm going to take you right out. Drop, you're free. He freed you. That's God. Right? No one can do that except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can be there, no, a little bit more. Press the button now. You can do that. That's all you can do though. But the ability for it to be lifted, taken out, and safely dropped, and for it to escape that box, that's on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you need both. You need what? You need both. You need both. مَنْ يَهْدِي اللَّهُ فَلَا مُضِلَّ لَهُ وَمَنْ يُضْلِلْ فَلَا هَادِيَ لَهُ. What type of guidance is that talking about? Tawfiq. Right? That's tawfiq. Right? From Allah Azza wa Jal. Let's get into it. Huwa, qul. So now we know as Muslims, we have an obligation to propagate the message of Tawheed. That's an order. Qul, to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to us as well. And if we're going to start a message of Islam with anyone, 9 times out of 10, what do we begin with? Guess what we begin with? Go ahead. So I was at a Revert conference this week. I spoke at a Revert conference this week. And After the conference, a young man came to me. He's a university student. He's not here. Okay, good. All right. I didn't want to put him on blast or anything. But he goes to this university. Good guy. He's not Muslim though. Right? So he starts asking, he's like, listen, I got some questions. And I was in the masjid and people were lining up. I was like, let's go to my car. Let's just get out of here and let's just go to my car so I can be intimate with you. Like, what do you need? So I'm like, get in my car, started the car. He's like, okay, I got these questions. He's like, as a Muslim, how do you believe in this? And how do you believe in this? And how do you believe in this? And I'm like, bro, listen. Number one, there's a fight I got to get to right now and I got to watch it. Right? Like, I got to get to this fight, right? And you're asking me a lot of questions right now that, like, I really want to give you the answer to. But you know what, bro? Your issue is not with what you're asking. Your issue is that you don't believe in what? God. A lot of the times people ask you a question. They'll say, your prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they'll say, your prophet, he married a 9-year-old. Right? Your prophet married a 9-year-old. Your religion oppresses what? Women, yeah. You guys force religion upon people. I say, you know what? You have great questions. But in order for me to answer your question, there's a prerequisite that you first must what? Understand. If you don't believe in the concept of God, he was an atheist, by the way. If you don't believe in the concept of God, why am I here trying to justify the law of God? Does this make sense? Like, that's counterproductive. Your issue is not with the rulings of Islam or what you assume. Your issue is that you don't believe there's a perfect creator who has created you and knows what's best for you and has ordained guidance for you in order for you to follow, to be guided. That's your problem. So all of these questions will not be resolved until you're first able to resolve the idea of who is God. And that's why this surah is so important. You're trying to be there, just no, the Prophet ﷺ was not, because when she was, why are you wasting your time answering that question? You're not going anywhere. You see, your issue is not with the question at hand. Your issue is the issue with, is there a God or is there not? And if there is, knowledgeable enough to know what is best for us. That's where you start. قُلْ huwa. Huwa is what? He. So then you have the little smart, oh, so I thought you said that God was not a man. Gotcha, right? It's like, no. Right? In Arabic, everything, whether it's living or it's non-living, will take a male or female pronoun or adjective, period. Right? Again, anything in the Arabic language, whether it's living or non-living, will take a male or female what? Pronoun or adjective. And the Arabs, they use the language in very unique ways. Number one, they'll use pronouns if anything is able to be identified as a male. So you as a man, I would say huwa rajulun. Right? Because I can easily identify he's a male. He's tall, he's handsome, he has a beard, he's looking fresh in his thobe, he's a male. Huwa rajulun. Number two, not knowing what something is. So let's just say someone's at the door. You would say, Man at-tariq? Man at-tariq? What does tariq mean? Like, it would be translated as the night comer. Right, isn't it? The night comer, right? وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقُ, the one who comes at night. But generally speaking, if you don't know what it is, you're not going to say مَنَ الطَّارِقَةِ. Are you going to say that? Because if you add the ta marbuta, what are you saying? The female knocker. But in a situation where you don't know what it is, you'll default to what? What is masculine? Thirdly, what cannot be described as male or female will take the pronoun as what? Male. That's how the Arabic language is used. And this is the situation here. Allah cannot be described as a male, or Allah cannot be described as a female. So we default back to the pronoun of what? Huwa. Huwa Allahu alladhi la ilaha illa hu. Allah. Qul huwa Allah. Allah. What is Allah? You know how many times Allah is mentioned in the Quran? Over 3,000 times. So this is the primary name of Allah. What is the meaning of Ar-Rahman? Okay, let's try this. What is the meaning of Al-Alim? What is the meaning of Al-Ghafur? What is the meaning of Allah? God. Al-Ilah. But what does that mean?
The God.
No, it's like the God. See, I think God. It's not God. Allah. What does Allah mean? I got you. See? Got him. Right? I got him. I got him. I know you'll know. Go ahead. He knows. He knows. Where did you learn that? I taught you? Good. Alhamdulillah. See? I know he's going to know. Allah means Al-Ilah. A lot of the times people will say this, and who's heard this before? Just raise your hand. You don't have to raise your hand actually. Who's heard this before? Allah, she raised her hand, I haven't even said anything. Allah means all the names together. Have you heard that one before? Yeah, you raised your hand right up. Allah means all. Could that be right? It could be right. Because if we conclude that Allah is Al-Ilah, the only one deserving of worship, He could not be Al-Ilah unless He was Huwa Allahu alladhi la ilaha illahu alimul ghaybi wa shahada huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim huwa Allahu alladhi la ilaha illahu al-Malikul Quddus as-Salamul Mu'minul Muhayminul Azizul Jabbarul Mutakabbir. Right? He would not be the only one worthy of worship unless He possessed what? Those names and those attributes. So yes, it includes those names and those attributes, because He would be the only one worthy of worship, because He's the only one who possesses those perfect names and attributes. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? It makes sense. Okay, I got 10 minutes. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ. I got one more word. Ahad. Ahad. What does Ahad mean? One and only. Wahid is what? One. لا يوجد في البيت أحد. What does that mean? There's absolutely what? No one in the house. Right? Ahad, what is before one? Zero. What is after one? Two. So we don't say one, we say Ahad. One and only. It will not change. It will never decrease, and it will never what? Increase. He is Allah, the one and only. وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Anyone. No one. طيب. الصمد. قل هو الله أحد. الله صمد. الله صمد. How many names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are in this chapter? Starting with even the Basmalah. Okay, you say, okay. What do you say? Six. MashaAllah. Allah, give me the sixth one.
Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Ahad, As-Samad.
I forgot the most important one. Allah. Right? Allah. Right? Five. Who said? You guys said five, right? Right? Bismillah. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Is Bismillah part of the surah? What do you mean argument?
Like some scholars say it is part of the surah.
Is it? No. What surah is she referring to? Surah Al-Fatiha. Right? Surah Al-Fatiha. That's why I have to say, that's why I had to say including what? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Al-Fatiha, yes, there's a difference of opinion whether Bismillah is part of the surah or part of the verses or not, right? طيب. As-Samad, Allahu Samad. What does Samad mean? Go ahead.
The one everyone depends on, and he's self-sufficient. He's self-sufficient, but
And he is dependent on?
no one.
No one. So just say that.
The independent.
The independent. So the one whom everyone is dependent on and he is dependent on? None. That is As-Samad. That is As-Samad. You know Surah Al-Ikhlas, its number one objective is to highlight the difference between the creator and the creation. If you say قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ what? Ahad, one and what? Only. As per the creation, one and many. Isn't that right? One and many. Allahu Samad. He is self-sufficient. He is independent, where we as are what? Dependent. We're dependent. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He does not beget, or is he begotten? Meaning he doesn't give birth, or was he born? Right? And what are we debunking here? What are we refuting in this statement? Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Huh? The Trinity. Right? We're debunking it. This is not our faith. God is not born, or God does not give birth. Right? God is not born, or God does not give birth. This is from Allah distinguishing himself from the creation. He's trying to separate himself. Why was Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sent? Why was Prophet ﷺ sent initially? Why? Okay, go ahead.
Because the religion of Allah was lost
How was it lost though?
through people changing
But what did they change?
the scriptures.
But the main part of that,
They added associations.
they associated partners with Allah. So God would always send another prophet or messenger whenever what? Whenever Tawheed was compromised. Right? Whenever Tawheed was compromised. And Tawheed was compromised because they started taking men as what? As divine beings. They took Isa as the son of God, or as God himself, depending on what type of denomination you're looking at. So Allah, He sends a messenger. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفْوًا أَحَدٍ. What does that mean? وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفْوًا أَحَدٍ. See? Guys, I want you just to... There's no surah that you recite more in your salah than قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٍ. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Qiyam al-Layl. What does وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفْوًا أَحَدٍ mean? Go. I gave you last one. I'm going to give it to this brother right here. Sisters, brothers are... Yalla, go ahead, catching up.
There's no one like him.
Yeah, that's good. That's all right. There's no one like me either, yeah, but you know, right? It's all right, but what does it really mean? Oh, okay, go ahead.
There's no one on like the same level of comparison to them.
Okay.
Same level of importance and significance. You can't have someone equal to them.
Good, that's the key word there. There is nothing co-equal or even comparable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who here has ever said, I want to imagine Allah? Who here has ever said, I'm going to try and picture Allah in my mind? Put up your hand. Do it like every day, man. You're not weird if you do. Would you be able to ever visualize Allah in your mind? But why? But why though? We want to know why. Prophet ﷺ said, you will never see Allah in the dunya, not even in your what? Dreams. You can see the Prophet ﷺ in your dreams. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant that to us. But would you ever be able to see Allah in your dream? No, you never be. Why could you not see Allah in your dream though? Go ahead.
Because anything you see cannot be equal to Allah. Move one ahead.
For what reason though?
Because there's nothing like him.
Go. Yeah, that's good. But yeah.
Basically creating an image of a creation.
Any image that you have stored in your mind, any image, would fall under the category of what? Creation. Even if you were to take all those images and try and put them together and formulate an ultimate image, would that still be able to justify the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, because every image is derived from an image that is what? Created. You'll never be able to imagine Allah. You'll never be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah is not the creation, but He is the creator. There's a very important principle that I want to finish off with right now. I have 3 minutes. Okay. And that is the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. Very important. This is a principle that we learn in Aqidah, in Tawheed more specifically. Laysa meaning what? Nothing. كَمِثْلِهِ what? Shay. Anything. وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. So this verse right here, it's broken down into two parts. You have what we call nafi and ithbat. Negation and affirmation. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. This is, if you want to think about God, this is God. There is nothing like God. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ. Well, maybe nothing like God. That is the default. There is nothing co-equal or comparable to God. However, وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. But there's still affirmation. This is what I teach a lot of my young students. It shares a name, but not the same. Okay, does Allah see? Do I see? It shares a name, but not the same. Do I have mercy? Does Allah have mercy? It shares a name, but it is not the same. Okay? إِلَّا بِتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى. Does Allah have a face? Now now I know this. Now we're like, oh, this is what type of sheikh this guy is. Huh? That's fine. It's okay. I'm good. I'm good with what I believe in. And I don't discriminate. But I'm good with what I believe in. Does Allah have a face? Yeah, He says He has a face. So I know who you are too. Okay? Right? Allah has a face. Does my phone have a face? Does my phone have a face? Yeah, it shares a name, but what? Does Allah have a hand? Yad Allah fawqa aydihim. Okay? So there's a hand or there's an arm. Okay? Does a clock have an arm? Yeah. Just because something shares a name, it doesn't necessarily mean what? It's the same. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the same. Allah affirmed this for Himself. I say, sami'na wa ata'na. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, it's actually like this and it's actually like that. I don't know. But if Allah says He has it, He has it. And if I needed to know, then guess who would have told me? The Prophet ﷺ. If I needed to know how exactly His face was, or how exactly His hand was, or how exactly His shin is, then who would have told me exactly how it is? If it was knowledge that I needed to know. It would have had to have been propagated by the Prophet ﷺ. Or else the Prophet wouldn't have come with what? The complete message. Or the Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. So I say, I attribute to Allah what Allah attributes to Himself. With no comparison. I'm going to finish with this statement of Imam Malik rahimahullah. There once was a man who approached Imam Malik rahimahullah. And he said, Ya Imam, how did Allah istawa? Istawa. What is stawa? Thumma stawa alal. Allah created the heavens and the earth. And then he says, Thumma stawa. And afterwards, He what? The translation for istiwa is He, I believe it's, He sits on a throne that suits His majesty. That's how it's like usually translated. Okay? Kayf istawa. So this person's like, how did God sit? Because sitting is a what? They say sitting is a what? It's a weakness. Kayf istawa. How did Allah sit? You know what Imam Malik said? He said, I think no, he didn't say that. He didn't say that because he can't say it, can he? No. He says, Al-istiwa ma'loom. Wal-kayfiyya majhul. Wal-imanu bihi wajib. Was-su'al anhu bid'ah. He says, Al-istiwa is known in the Quran. It's nothing we deny. Because Allah says He Himself approached His throne in a way that suits His majesty. He said it, I believe in it. Wal-kayfiyya majhul. And the way He did it is what? Unknown. The Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us. Therefore, is it our responsibility to know how? No. Wal-imanu bihi what? And to believe in it is what? Why? Because it's in the Quran. وَالسُّؤَالْ عَنْهُ بِدْعَةٌ. And to ask about it is an innovation. Because it's nothing the companions ever did. Companions never asked, how did Allah, how did Allah, how did Allah? They just believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you knew how Allah approached His throne in a way that suits His majesty, how would that change your life? How would that change your life? This is why we need to stay away from these arguments. And again, for me, I'm just very passionate about this. My specialization was in Islamic theology, like aqeedah. And I just found that one of the greatest tricks of the shaitan is that he tries to complicate everything. You understand what I'm saying? He tries to complicate everything, and you're this, and you're this, and you're that, and you're this. I told you guys this last time, and I'll tell you this time again. If you understand this chapter of the Quran, simply the way we've discussed it, and we've shared with one another. This wasn't me just lecturing you guys. This was you being interactive with me. If this is how you understand Allah, I truly believe that that is sufficient enough for your faith as a Muslim. Now, sure, there's levels to knowledge, right? But it is a good first step. So brothers and sisters, we come to the end of this chapter. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say He is Allah, the one and only. Allahu Samad, the only one who is self and which everybody is dependent upon. What's the meaning of Allah again? The only one who deserves to be, because He's my Rabb and He has the beautiful names and attributes, right? Allahu Samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad. He does not beget, or is He begotten? He doesn't give birth. That is a deficiency. That is a weakness. Or He wasn't given birth to. Because if He was given birth to, that means somebody was here what? Before Him. And we already established, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ, one and only. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفْوًا أَحَدٌ. There is nothing co-equal or what? Comparable. So there's nothing equal to Allah, or there's nothing that you can actually what? Compare with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you recite this, guys, wallahi, if you recite it with this understanding and this emotion and this, belief, one of the biggest questions we have, how do I gain khushu' in my salah? Isn't that one? This is how you gain khushu' in your salah. By understanding what you're reciting. This was a chapter that you've probably been reciting for 10, 15 years of your life. But you yourself recognize today, maybe I didn't really know what I was reciting. Maybe I really didn't know. I probably prayed thousands of prayers. I had no idea what I was saying. That's the beauty of the Quran. That's the beauty of the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be amongst those who listen to this speech and follow the best of it. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Again, جزاكم الله خيرا everyone for your time. And inshallah, I believe Salah is in. Inshallah. Yeah, please go ahead.
Inshallah, we'll post a Menti so people can ask questions. So in the group chat, the Quran Project group chat, I'll post a link with a Q&A link where you guys can ask all your questions there, inshallah, and we can forward them to the Shaykh. Jazakallah khairan. We're going to pray Maghrib right here. I need a couple of volunteers to take the chairs back, And I need a couple volunteers to set up the prayer mats right away. This is a team effort, inshallah. Let's set it up.